get outside, take a walk in nature.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes take your headphones out and just listen, hear the sounds, see what's going on around you. Pay attention. The world's awesome. What's not to love about the experience? Like even the bad stuff, you sometimes need that to give the good more meaning. And just pay attention.
Welcome to the Mindform Podcast, where we delve into the minds of some of the most interesting people on the planet, discuss psychology, philosophy, and personal growth, and share the wisdom we uncover with you. Join us as we explore the art of forming our minds. Here's your host, Frank Lawton.
Kia ora from New Zealand. Welcome to another episode of the Mindform Podcast, an extension of the Mindform Collective and training platform. This podcast is similarly a space dedicated to exploring and altering psychological landscapes together. In each weekly episode, I'll speak with a new guest, generally members of Mindform, to extract wisdom, refine ideas, and collaborate on the game of architecting our minds. So this week's guest is Lucas. He's based in Washington, USA, and Lucas has been an integral part of the Mindform Collective since its inception. He led a month themed to the book The Runaway Species, where we discuss the profound power in human connection and creativity. Lucas has been meditating daily for many, many years. He's full of passion and insight in regard to Buddhism and mindfulness. And personally, I particularly appreciate Lucas's capacity to communicate about the incommunicable. Those most alive parts of life, which we're only really able to capture through story, feeling, art. I think he's been thinking about that stuff for a long time, so I'm keen to get into the weeds with that. With that, welcome to the Mindform Podcast. Lucas, I'm really stoked to be talking to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Frank, for having me. I'm really looking forward to this. I'm excited.
Yeah, it'll be fun, man. And Ryan, the founder of Mindform, who's just listening in the chat live right now. He has mentioned something that I forgot. He also leads a space in Mindform with the no self-actualization, which, by the name, it's to do with self-actualization, but also egolessness, non-self, and that sort of Buddhist framework. Lucas, how are you doing right now? The question I'd like to ask: what have been your most salient feelings today?
I'm doing good. I just got off work about an hour ago, and I'm actually tomorrow. I'm traveling to go back to Alaska, which is my hometown, and go hang out with my friends in Alaska. So I'm pretty excited. I'm kind of in vacation mode right now. So
great, that's cool. Far out. It'll be very cold there at this time of year. It's summer here in New Zealand. Okay, I'm going to jump into... I'm really curious. You just let me know the other day you have been meditating almost daily for, was it 17, 18 years?
It's roughly about... I don't know the exact date, but if I were to go back, I know I started sometime in 2009, started continuously in 2009. So I think that's roughly about 17 years or so. So yeah, I've been doing that daily, and I actually I don't want to brag about it, but I actually haven't missed a day.
You haven't? Yeah. I didn't want to ask. Because then you're like, oh well, not technically, but that's insane. That's crazy that every single day. That's what I'm so awful at that, man. Like, I'm very into the meditation, and this year is my year of consistency. Just trying to keep these things that I know are really impactful for me. Just keep going every day. But I mean, partly it's just being a dad. But there's so many things that vary in the day, and it's like, how do I keep? So very impressive. Well done. That's wild. And how long is do you sometimes do a really short meditation just to make sure you can fit it in? How does that? Yeah, what is a normal daily meditation look like?
The way I've in my mind, I don't know where I got this idea, but it was probably from some sort of research I did on the internet back then. But I heard that basically got the idea of 10,000 hours, the 10,000 hour rule. And so if you divide 10,000 hours by an hour a day, that would take you, I think it's roughly about 28, 29 years, something like that. So I said, okay, if I can meditate every day for an hour a day in about 29 years, I should be a master at this. And so I've been doing it at least an hour a day, every day. Now, sometimes that takes, like, I have to cut it into different chunks to do so. But usually I try to either do it in two chunks or one solid chunk. Uh, and then there's been obviously other days within that time period where I've done it for way more than an hour. Like I've had a few, like I call them marathon sessions. Yeah, where I've gone for a lot longer than that. So right now, I don't know where I'm at in terms of hours. I haven't really. I kind of stopped thinking about that like a long time ago, but I'm sure I'm somewhere between 6,000 and 7,000 hours, somewhere in there.
Wow, I'm so impressed. Actually, that's crazy. You know how I pull off meditating every day? I set my baseline at 5 minutes. That's how I manage. Okay, I just really don't feel like it, so I'm going to just do it for 5 minutes. That's crazy. I mean, I tried to keep that habit up for a little bit because I've done the Vipassana, the Dharma group that do the 10-day meditation courses.
Mm.
They have that recommendation, do an hour. Well, they say an hour every morning and evening, but I was like, okay, I can do an hour a day. But that lasts a week for me. The only way I can keep it up is with a very low target. So that's incredible. Yeah, that's wild. That's like how that's the way like people who are giving advice around like forming habits. That's what they recommend you don't do because it's not realistic and no one can pull off just deciding to start doing that and keeping it up. So yeah, how did that start for you? Where did you get, I mean, that was your idea with the 10,000 hours thing, but what made you decide that it was so important to you?
Well, at first, it really wasn't all that important to me. I mean, I think I got into it the same reason why a lot of people get into it is, for the like benefits of the practice, where you people say you become more calm and that sort of stuff. And I considered myself a pretty highly agitated person at the time when I started.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just kind of went into it and was like, well, I read some books on some people like that meditate, like Ram Dass and some other people.
Mm.
I remember reading, I don't know where I read like, hey, try to get an hour in, but I started to do an hour just right off the bat, and it was incredibly hard. I noticed that within like the first 5 minutes, I was just kind of like, what is this? This is like insanely hard. Like, why? How can people do this? How can anybody do this for so long? But there was something in there that I thought was kind of interesting. It was like I noticed that these were the first times that I noticed myself thinking about that, like thinking about these thoughts. And I thought that was kind of interesting. And even though I know, like, technically the point of meditation is to eventually get out of the thinking process, but that's like, I would say now that's at the very, like, that's way beyond when you're a beginner. When you're a beginner, like a lot of it is about thinking. And I think that's where a lot of people kind of go wrong, I think, in my personal opinion. I would say I talk to a lot of people that say they have so much trouble with it, and they'll say something along the lines of, well, I just can't stop thinking. And that always kind of makes me laugh because it's like, well, yeah, of course. Like, like that's what this is about, like it's about
Yeah,
like
no,
noticing your mind thinking.
I'm completely with you on that, and I've been through that. Like the start of my meditation journey was very much okay. The goal in this sitting session is to like get to a place where I'm not thinking, and if I don't pull that off, then it's like a failed meditation session. Um, and I suppose just doing it long enough and maybe developing some of the metacognitive skills that one develops when through meditating as well, I was able to see what that anxiety and that thought and that attachment to not thinking was doing. And you come to realize that it's really just practicing the art of paying attention. And there's so much, especially in the early stages, of the benefit you get out of meditation comes through changes in your thinking or thoughts you'd never had before, because you'd given yourself that opportunity to process things in a new way, or to have that meta awareness, like, oh wow, I didn't realize that I've just been like running this assumption in my mind on repeat. Like, is that even true? All of that stuff. Yeah. So I'm totally with you. I don't try to not think. I mean, I feel stoked about it, I guess, when I do get really, really immersed in focus on. For me, I focus on, it's always physical sensations, whether that's like full body scanning or just the sensations in my nose when I'm breathing. But I feel, oh yes, if I get lost in total absorption in those sensations for seconds or minutes or whatever, but you realize that having the goal of not thinking, it is not the way to enhance that absorption, because you're thinking about not thinking. I mean,
Yeah.
meditation's nuts, the whole so many
Yeah.
paradoxes.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very true. Yeah. And then you start to think about like, what you were saying, the goal of meditation. It's like, I recently, like over the past, I don't know, year or so, I've come to the conclusion that there actually is no goal to meditation. That's one of the big, like, letting go of type moments, I think, that people have when they do it a lot, is like, you're not doing this to reach any sort of thing. You're just doing this to be, like, and I think that's what meditation is about, is like the ground of being, of just feeling and being in your body and being in the world, being in the universe. Like, you're a part of this thing. And that's kind of amazing.
Yeah, I'm completely with you. It reminds me of a quote that has been speaking to me a lot recently from the Bhagavad Gita. What's really the core idea in there that comes up numerous times, which is do the work without attachment to the reward, which is such a paradoxical thing. So it's like, well, why am I doing the work if not for the outcome that I anticipate the work will, like, it makes sense as a sentence, but it's actually really, really hard to grasp. Wu Wei, as Ryan says in the chat. It's it's very hard to grasp that really the ultimate goal and the ultimate state of well-being, which is what all of our work, whether directly or indirectly or however, is trying to achieve for us. We're just trying to feel good, right? It's all trying to emulate this state of peace and being and acceptance, and that sort of just well, you can call it non-attachment or a lack of anxiety, but that lack of need, right? Just being here, that's quality living right there. But a state of goallessness is the goal, and that's always very confusing. And
Yeah.
I guess it's a different kind of goal. I don't know. It's something that I'm still unable to articulate it. Maybe you could get into have a go at articulating that, because I struggle.
Well, I mean, it's interesting. I think Alan Watts has talked about this a lot in a few of his books, about how, like, having the desire to not desire is still a desire, So, like, how do you get around that? And that is an interesting question. It's something I've thought about so much, but like, it is interesting because desire. It's said that desire creates the universe, and our desires are like how why we do anything. Like you just like Ryan says, you direct your desires towards processes, not end states, and I think that is probably very true. Yeah, that's really good advice. But also that I think there's also something about understanding what needs versus like wants, and I think that's kind of a big thing that I've been kind of grappling with lately is needs versus wants. Like we need certain things, but then other things we want, but we don't always get those things that we want, So, and it, that's not the end of the world, And a lot of the times we're not even really sure what we want, and we're not even really sure, like if we get what we want, that it will actually make any difference. You know what I mean? So, like attaching yourself to something that is so impermanent to begin with, it just kind of like I don't know. There's something like there's no real like tangibleness to any of that, like what could you attach yourself to that you could possibly get that would change everything for you and you'll never have a problem again. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
there really isn't anything like that. Like as far as I know, I've never been able to find anything like that in my life. I don't know about you, but it's one of those things I've been searching for for pretty much my whole life.
I think we can all relate to that. Yeah, I don't know. I've got a lot that's been racking through my mind, like a bunch of questions I'd want to ask based on what you've just said. But one thing, sort of off of Ryan's remark there in the listener chat, direct your desires towards processes, not end states. That is probably a really good way to articulate the different kind of desire that it is, because when what you're achieving with the metacognition that you develop through meditation, mindfulness practices, is it's a capacity to, instead of being your thoughts, your feelings, your wants, your attention, you're doing that stuff, right? You're being something that's none of that somehow, and doing thoughts, doing whatever. Or I mean, you just hear the thoughts; they're part of your experience, but you're able to you're able to pivot as opposed to being that. And when you're in a state of, when you desire to not desire, then again you're you've you've created there's a state of desire that you're being for that non-desire, right? But the shift is to have like all of these mental sort of actions to separate yourself from them, to metacognate, to have awareness, whatever, that allows you to step back from them. And then um it's not I desire not to desire. It's like, oh, I'm just choosing not to desire right now. It's just the choice I'm making. I've made the connection that desiring feels this way, and I'm just choosing not to do it, right? And that's, I mean, I think there's a certain level of, you get people who have these big breaks, I guess, in their spiritual journey, like Eckhart Tolle, and the chap who wrote The Untethered Soul, I forget his name,
Michael Singer.
Michael Singer, who kind of, at the point in the journey that they say, oh, you don't need to do all this meditation and stuff. Michael Singer's quite big on that. You just step back, but that's a skill generally that you need to develop. Like for me, something that I've been able to do that I've gained from meditation is that I can be going through all the stuff. Oh, I want to feel this way, and then I could just have these moments where it's like, whoa, that's just all the stuff that's happening in my brain. I'm just going to look over here instead. And that's a completely different type of changing your situation to the normal mode we're in, right? Instead of being what's going on in your head, in order to change your reality, you're not what's going on in your head, and you're able to change the landscape in there. And that's insane. But you brought up, on another point, you said, oh, it's said that desire creates the world. And something I want to ask you, because you are sort of the resident Buddhism representative on Mindform, is Buddhism true to you? Is like everything, I mean, obviously there's sects in Buddhism, there's some variants of opinion, but yeah, to you, is Buddhism true in its entirety?
Well, it's a hard question because what is truth? Like as far as I know, like everything is subject to change, and if everything is subject to change, that means everything is impermanent. And so, if everything is impermanent, then that means there can be no truth except impermanence. Like that, I mean, I know that's kind of like a very logical step that I got there, like by going there, but I, I, I believe that that is true. I believe that impermanence is true. And
Mm.
I believe that things are subject to change. And I believe that the Buddha was right when he said that. And uh, yeah, so I would say that I agree with what the Buddha said specifically about the Four Noble Truths.
Mm-hmm.
I believe the Four Noble Truths are true. And uh, and that's me coming to that conclusion, though, because I've been meditating on it for so
Mm-hmm.
long. I didn't believe it when I first read it. I was like, what is he talking about? Like, what? How could that possibly be true? But uh, but I've come to those conclusions over a long time. Uh, so, oh yeah, and I guess to go through the Four Noble Truths really quick is the first noble
Sure.
truth is about life. Life is dukkha. It's in the West, it's synonymous with suffering, but it's not necessarily suffering. Uh, and there's like three aspects to that. One is conditional states, the other is impermanence, and oh, I'm drawing a blank right now. Anyways, the second one is that there is a cause to your suffering, and the cause to your suffering is because you're attaching yourself, or you're resisting something, or you're identifying as something. But the big one in that is the identification. That's what they call anatma.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then the third one is there. There is a if there's a cause to suffering, then there would have to be a way out of suffering. That's the third noble truth. And then the fourth noble truth is the noble eightfold path. And by going through the noble eightfold path, you can rid yourself of suffering. That's the Buddhist claim. And I
Yeah.
believe that he is accurate on that.
Yeah, I think I believe all of that
Yeah.
too, personally. Yeah, I made some. It's not up on this wall. I don't think I ever printed it, but I made some sort of poster for myself of those Four Noble Truths in language that's meaningful to me. I suppose. I think I used the term that Ryan likes to use for dukkha, which is like dissatisfaction or
Yeah.
something
Dissatisfaction.
like that. And uh, and then I think I used the term craving and resisting, maybe, to be the cause. And then yeah, there's a way out. Or unsatisfactoriness. That's a good one. Yeah, that might be even better. And yeah, anyway, I would it for myself because yeah, those do ring very very true to me. And perhaps this idea that you mentioned earlier of desire creates the world, something in the mindfulness journey of my life at the moment, I really have come to, more so than before, I suppose, experientially understand that none of my concepts are reality, right? Like all of my interpretations, all of my labels, all of that's a tree, this is a chair, I'm Frank, all of that stuff it truly is just a labeling tool. It's a cognitive resource, but none of those things don't exist. There's this, I mean, I'm still just using words to try to capture it now, but there's this infinitely complex landscape of things that are totally interconnected and interacting. The causal web is of immeasurable complexity, um, and we, for whatever reason and by whatever means, we map it out to function within it towards certain ends. And without desire, that process of deconstructing reality into, or building a map of reality and then perceiving that map in our experience as opposed to reality itself. We build the map because we want to get around, right? So the removal of desire removes the map, and perhaps the claim is not that the universe, creation itself will cease to exist when desire ceases to exist, but that the world of forms, the world as we understand it, will cease to exist. I mean, that's always a tricky way to. I think all of these spiritual traditions, right? They speak of afterlife and existence and non-existence, and there's a lot of different ways you can interpret that.
Yeah, I love that. So you mentioned a couple things that I've been really big on, like pretty much since I started. Well, at least since I don't know, it might have been a couple of years after I started meditating, but I heard the term, uh, the map is not the territory. And
Yes, that's perfectly said, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah, I've loved that because it is so true. And you know, how we speak to ourselves in our own minds, it's so easy for us to get caught up in that first like thought, you know, but that thought is a conception. It's not it's not real in the sense that like it's actually out there. You know, it's real in our heads for a second, but it's also impermanent. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like the thought goes away.
It's another very small, fleeting component of experience, like all the other
Yes.
components. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Very fascinating. I love the way you described it, though. Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, well, I think about that a lot, and I've done a lot of writing for myself around this idea, simply because it's so hard to capture as a concept. I mean, to try to use words to explain the boundaries, use language to explain the boundaries of language, and also talk about what's on the outsides of language. It's I mean, that's obvious why that's difficult to
Yeah.
do, right? And the same reason it's the like understanding what's pre the universe or pre time or beyond the boundaries of creation. You know, when people talk about God or what was before the bang, it's the same reason that those are unsolvable problems. You're trying to conceptualize and contain something um, which is beyond the very reality of the tools that are trying to
Yeah.
understand it. Oh, that was so hard for me to. I couldn't. My brain was working very hard to string those words together. Just
Yeah. Yeah. To go along with
uh,
that,
yeah.
where is the boundary? You know, like
Mm, mm.
where does the boundary begin and where does it end? You know, like to me, like as far as I know, like all of that stuff that we label as boundaries, like that's all they are. They're just labels.
Yes, that's another good point. And that's one thing. Like, so I have these. It's you can't read them, I think, on this video, but these for those who'd be listening just without video, there's 6 little post-it notes vertically stacked on my wall here, and they're sort of core truths that I've realized through meditation, uh, mindfulness, LSD, or otherwise just a lot of reflecting and meaningful experiences. And the very first, there's a sequence to it. Like I read through it every now and then, and the very first is exactly what we're talking about. It's the inability of our concepts to capture reality. And yes, one thing I've also found to be completely true is limitations and boundaries themselves are only conceptions, which is an extremely exciting and freeing thought. Like when I do that, I read through these a lot. Like anytime I'm just not feeling super fantastic, I just read through these, and yeah, it's so it's so exhilarating to realize that like everything that you see as a threat, as a boundary, as a rule about how the world operates is actually just your best guess, and you can't be super sure if it's true or not, and you can just kind of fuck around and find out, So that's what it gets. That's what that understanding creates in me. That playfulness. Yes. Ryan just said he'd love to mine those for psychotechnologies. Oh, I reckon there's be some new things in here. I mean, this is definitely it's a list of psychotechnologies for me. It's
Yeah.
states through particular remembering particular modes of perception and activating them, and that the states that empower action and well-being and for myself. So, um, yeah, there's probably some new things there. We can have a look at that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got another question
Okay.
for you around all of this stuff. So, you've talked about, I mean, everything that we've been discussing, you say, oh, there was this point in my meditation journey where this really hit home for me. And you said just a moment ago as well that the Four Noble Truths, you feel as though they're you believe them not just in principle, but you've observed them to be true through your practice. So I'm really curious. And you said as well that you were quite anxious, or you saw yourself as agitated. I think highly agitated was the term you used. I'm curious to understand, like, phenomenologically, like, tell us through the lens of your experience, the landscape of your thoughts and your attention. I want to understand how that 17 years of daily meditation, an hour a day, has changed the quality of your experience. Like, what have been, what, say, three major shifts in the nature of how you think or the quality of your life through meditation?
Yeah. So I would say number one is awareness, because meditation. So one of the big lessons that I've learned is that a lot of this is related to consciousness, I believe, and I would define, or not really define, but I would say that consciousness is your ability to respond, whereas unconsciousness is your ability to react. So if you're unconscious of something, and if you're unconscious of the way you're acting and somebody cuts you off, your automatic, like, front brain, like, first thing that comes to might be like, oh, give that person the finger, you know? But if you're conscious of how you're reacting, of how you're thinking, then giving that person the finger doesn't actually do anything. It doesn't solve any problems. It doesn't change the fact that that person cut you off, you know? And by the way, you've probably cut somebody else off at some time in your life. So, like, would you want that person to treat you the way you've treated them? Like, just things like that, I think, are like those kind of lessons that I've learned a lot throughout the years. And the funny thing about that is I've learned that in just my normal waking life, like,
Yes.
normal, just, yeah, in my normal beta state where I'm in right now, like, but I believe that those have come to me because of, like, the ability to sit down and be patient with my own mind and like see that through, the course of time. The second one I would say is
wait, can I just get some clarification on that first one? Would you this is how I understand the difference between respond and react. Is responding sort of reacting is according to your assumptions, according to what you're caught up in the moment, what you do in response to something. But responding is like, is it reacting but with a greater incorporation of the fullness of reality, like the truth, and your actual highest values and virtues? Like, that's how I understand the difference when I'm reacting and when I'm responding. In both occasions, something's happening to me, some cogs are turning in my brain, and then I'm putting something out there to try to, in some motivated way, right? I think that's responding and reacting. To me, in my experience, they both could be described like that. But the difference is that when I'm responding, there's a separation from whatever the first assumption is of how to respond. But two, I'm thinking about, well, what is it that's really important to me, and how do things actually work? And then I'm acting out of that. So do you think it's more of just a difference in the quantity of truth and the quality of your processes, as opposed to like a really like a metaphysical difference or something between reacting and responding?
I think that I'm sorry, I kind of got lost here a little, but could you repeat the last part? Because I kind of lost track of my whole thought
Yeah,
process.
absolutely. No, that's all right. That's all right. It was There were a lot of prefaces to that question. So reacting versus responding.
Yeah.
Are they the same thing, but responding basically just to you? Are they the same thing, but responding just includes more truth and more considerations of your highest values?
I think responding is, like you said in the beginning, where it was more of like more in conjunction with reality going on around you at that time, whereas reacting is more of like, it's like, you know, when you go to the doctor and they hit your elbow and it, you know, goes like that. It's just like it's an automatic like response mechanism. You know, you're an automatic reaction, like because of the stimulus that was applied to you. But with responding, I think it's more like actually a lot more like there's a lot more going on. It's not just like, hey, the very first thing that comes to my mind is the thing that I'm going to do. Like it reminds me a lot of Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow by
Great book.
Daniel Kahneman, you know, like where our very first reaction, sometimes it's right, but a lot of the times it's very wrong, you know? But if we stop and we slow down and we think about it, there's usually a reason why people do things, you know, like it's not just because people are quote unquote evil or bad or whatever, you know, like whatever label we want to give them. It's usually because something happened prior and something led up to those, like the way they see the world, and that's the way they act. But a lot of people have never like really questioned those things, you know, and I think that's fascinating. I always come back to the is it the Stoic that said I'm drawing a blank right now, but the Stoic that said a life unexamined is not worth living.
That was Socrates, wasn't it?
Socrates. I don't know why I draw a blank.
Not sure he was a Stoic, but yeah, all good. Yeah, no, absolutely. Something that you know, one of the many thoughts that's been just coming up throughout this conversation is presence, right? Like awareness of the present moment. And you hinted at it there. You know, what's actually going on around. And one way that you could possibly map out the difference between responding and reacting is reacting is it's a kind of response that it's an echo from the past, right? Your genes have been built through a history, and that's why when you knock your elbow or your knee, it flick, your limb kicks or whatever, and that's, you know, and then you talk about trauma or emotional learnings. That's why when someone who kind of, I don't know, is like taller than you and has a stern face looks at you the wrong way, you get really anxious, or why you get super wound up and pull the finger when someone cuts you off in traffic, whatever the example, because you have past learnings. And so it's acting, again, it's not acting out of the reality of this moment, it's acting out of this moment filtered through really historic structures. And so the way to respond, you know, as opposed to react, is to see what's going on now, so you can get a rather unfiltered perception of how do things actually work, what does it actually want, as opposed to I'm living out of a fixed view, a fixed and simple view of how things work and what I want, that I sort of, that's from a conclusion I came to a very, very long time ago. So that's one way I would, when you were talking, that made sense to me of how to define the difference. And that, you know, for all of this stuff, for seeing the reality as opposed to the labels that you have of the reality, to being able to have that metacognition, right? All of that is super empowered. If not, it's through presence. It's through being in the present moment, and it's an idea that is obviously around a lot in these circles, people in Buddhism and in the circles of mindfulness and meditation. And it has new meaning to me every time I use it.
Yeah.
And I think it can be quite difficult to articulate what presence really, really is, and what it means. But truly just paying attention to what is happening right now, like just this constant moving moment. when I have this list of truths that I go through, the second category is about the now. Only the now exists. Awakening to the now is nirvana. Um, Everything that happens is happening now. Uh, everything I want to attain, I can only attain now. All of that, right? Just that, because there is no, the past is just an echo that you're noticing, a pattern of echo from. That's what the past is, right? That we're noticing now, and then
Mm-hmm.
the future is our imagination. All of that. But I something I find difficult about presence, which I'd be interested in your thoughts on, is oh, I've just lost my train of thought for a moment. Let me see if I can get it back.
Well, while you're on
Yeah,
that, I guess I would
yeah.
say the second thing,
Oh
because you
yes,
asked me
yeah,
the
great,
question,
yeah, yes,
uh,
please.
I would say the second thing is a level of compassion. I think has gone way up, and I think that is with anybody that meditates. I just believe that that's true. Like if you meditate for long enough, you're going to be a more compassionate person. I'm not saying you're going to be more compassionate than other people. I'm just saying that you're going to be more compassionate than when you started. Like it
Mm-hmm,
just
mm-hmm.
is going to happen uh, because you just see like how a lot of this stuff when you're meditating, you do go through some suffering. Like there are some days, and you've meditated. I'm sure you know this. Like there are some days or when you're on a retreat, sometimes where you can't stop the thoughts and it's just like bombarding you and
Oh, it's like the
you
lowest to
think,
the low.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're getting into those like deep dark states. And like to me that like just to know that that is happening to basically every person at some point in their life, like that that's so
Mm.
sad, like that just like makes me sad, and it makes me like want to like help those people, like uh, I don't know how else to really describe it other than that, but I do believe that that is a truth. Like I do believe that's true.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Ryan just said in the chat there, when you learn how little control you have of your own brain, you gain appreciation for how little everyone else has too. That is definitely part of it. You realize. I mean, we all go through this, right? We all have all the time, or at different times in our lives, we have this immense suffering, we have pain that's going on, and but what you get the acute awareness of, I think, when like, and I've definitely had this when I've done these 100 hours of meditation in 10 days. It's pretty
Yeah.
intense. What you get an acute awareness of is, yeah, it's just how powerless you are to it. It's just this thing that's happening, and you're along for the ride, and you feel, and there is this sense of helplessness, which is funny because at the same time, you're gaining power through your awareness. But I guess that's one of those non-paradoxical paradoxes people talk about, right? Like, knowing you have a problem is the first step to fixing it, kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, I have a distinct memory of just it's very, very distressing time in one of these meditation retreats. I'm basically just lying on the floor thinking to myself, why am I such a piece of shit? Oh my god. Like, it's because I have hostile thoughts, I have self-defeating thoughts, and I have all of these processes going on in my brain that make me miserable, that hurt other people, and I'm just like, it's just happening, and I'm not able to pull the reins in on that. It's like, geez. And yeah, when you realize that everyone's going through that, you just it's like, okay, well, we're all in this hellhole together. Let's kind of hold hands. And it reminds me, there's a really Sam Harris has a fantastic quote about this, which I like to share with people. It's too long for me to get word for word, but I'll paraphrase. It's something like, everybody you meet or ever encounter will suffer. They'll lose every single person that they love. They'll either die young, or like their body and or mind will degrade beyond recognition. It's just built into it, right? And why would you want to be anything other than kind to people in the meantime? Basically, is the phrase. And um, yes, it's not that that meditation causes you to suffer and so you get more empathy. It's not that so much that you develop the skill of compassion. I think it genuinely is that you just develop a really intense awareness
Yeah.
of that. Yeah,
Yeah, I agree. I
can't
mean,
forget it.
that, yeah, it's interesting how a lot of the stuff that you learn like kind of builds off of other like previous things, like I mentioned, the first thing was like awareness, like I wasn't even aware that like I had no awareness when I was younger, or maybe I just didn't care or didn't want to know about other people's, problems. Like to me, it was like, oh, well, I've got my problems. Like, why would I care about your problems? Like, but like that was the way I thought, and like I don't like hold myself. I'm not like mad at myself. I actually have more compassion for my previous self now than I used to, because I just didn't know. I didn't know a lot of this stuff. I hadn't ever thought about it. Like, yeah, it's just one of those things. Like, I agree. The Sam Harris quote, and I've heard that many times, and I love that. Like, it is true. Like, we're all going through this experience, and we're going to lose everything we've ever held dear to us. And
Yes, that's the way he put it, I think.
yeah, yeah. And at some point, like, uh, like something is going to hit you, and it's going to, rock your world. Like it's going to change the way you think about things. For me, I don't mean to belabor this point, but for me, a few years ago, I've talked about this, and I know this is a podcast, and I don't want to get like too depressing, but I'll say this: my cousin committed suicide a few years ago, and it was extremely, extremely hard. And I I had a hard time dealing with it, and I was going through like a lot of mental stuff with meditation at the time, like a lot of upheaval in meditation at the time. So that made it a lot harder for me. But I have to tell you, like, I've never felt more connected to my family than after that happened. Like it was like, hey, this is a wake up call to like, you got to start like treating people better. You got to start like telling people you care about them, like you love them. You want their well-being. You have their well-being at heart, and that's been very important to me ever since. So sorry to go on that tangent, but
That's okay. I mean, I think I've got a similar story, and
yeah, yeah,
yeah, and we could probably talk for 2 hours relating over that, but to shortcut it, I suppose, to sum up, I think, I think, there are these things like death and suffering, which are realities for all of us. I mean, we all know in principle that we're going to die one day, but it's just there's a real difference that sitting with that makes, because you don't want to sit with it because it's just really painful. Why do that to yourself? It doesn't make sense, But whether when you have the courage or the patience, or it's out of your hands, you have to sit with it, because something real horrible has just happened. You there's a lot. Yeah, there's just a lot of lessons, in that immense pain, and it was very, very similar lesson for me. And yeah, same. I was on the same place. I was big, I guess, on my mindfulness meditation journey at the time that my best friend took his own life, and yeah, it demands that you bring attention. I mean, I feel like the shift was actually, it was just, okay, this exists. Now I have to keep paying attention to it. The suffering exists. I have to keep paying attention to it. So for a long time, and to some degree, still to this day, after he passed, when I'm with people, I'm paying attention to the thing that's gonna be gone one day. That's in them.
yeah,
The thing that's gonna be gone one day when they die, or the thing that's getting gone every moment, right? Which is this one precious, unique moment we have together. There's an awareness of that, because I was made aware of that through both meditation and the very confronting weight of death, and also an awareness of this person's suffering, and that sucks, and why would I be mean to them? But it's not something I'm always totally aware of. I think it's transformational when you can have that stuff at the very, very top of your mind at all times, or at least fully integrated into your worldview.
Yeah, and by no means is that like me either. Like it's still this is still a journey, and I'm still going on it, and it's it yeah, every once in a while you see somebody, they do something and they just irritate you, and you're like, this person, but I try to stop at those moments, and I try to like think, okay, well, this person, they're a human being, like they have thoughts, feelings, they have desires, they have wants, they have all these other things that I've had. Like, where is the disconnect, like, and I do believe that there is a disconnect. It's just like we're just not on the same page uh in terms of like what we're arguing about, or the thing that's holding us back.
Yeah, man. Okay, what's your third lesson, or your third transformation for your meditation journey?
uh I kind of lost track, but so we had awareness, and we had
And compassion.
compassion. uh Oh yeah, and the third one is like just insights. Like you get them all the time. Like insights happen all the time. Like they're happening like all around me all the time. I feel like they're like every day. Just something happens, and it's like, oh yeah, like duh. Like I've never thought about that before, but that's changed. Okay, I'll give you an example. So
Yeah, I think I need that.
last on New Year's Day, before uh, before it struck the new year, I was uh, I was just hanging out at my house, and I was kind of like agitated, and I was like just kind of pacing back and forth. I don't even remember what it was that I was agitated about, but at some point, I remember thinking, like, what I remember asking myself, like, what is the problem? And I remember thinking, like, well, there isn't a problem. But my problem is that I want there to be a problem. And I thought that that was so fascinating. I was like, wait a second. Like, my problem is that I'm trying to find that there's a problem. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why I'm agitated. And as soon as I thought that, the agitation just went completely away, because there is no
Mm.
problem. Like, there is no problem. My whole life, I've been thinking that that there's a problem. There's something to be solved, but there is no problem. You know?
Oh yeah, I mean, Eckhart Tolle
Yeah,
talks about that a lot in The Power of Now, and um, it can be. I think it's one of the parts of the book that people can find most difficult to receive. It's like, what do you mean? There's no problem. My
yeah,
kids got cancer. You know what I mean? Um, but yeah, and I think there's different ways you could interpret what you that insight that you just said. But the way I interpret it, that makes the most sense to me, is that what's going on in your mind when you're agitated, when you were agitated walking around, is that there's this sort of presumption that things are wrong in
yeah,
general, and
yeah,
there's this need to locate the thing that's wrong and change it, right?
yeah,
Um, but yeah, it's the playing of that game that creates the feeling of agitation, and um, yeah, it's so interesting. I mean, this idea that I deal with this a lot as a parent. I think I might have mentioned this in a previous call. I feel these two emotions so intensely at the same time. I don't know if it's because I'm a parent, but it might be more to do with meditation or something. But just in the last sort of year and a half, these two almost opposite emotions of like reality is just this incredible beauty and aliveness, right? Like it's just this unfolding majesty, and I'm just playing here, and um, I don't need to be this or chase this or have this. It's a miracle, oh my gosh, to exist. That, and then on the other hand, and despair at the injustices of the world, the unnecessary suffering, corrupt systems, um, yada yada, right? And so I holding those things in tension a lot, and it's just hard to reconcile. I mean, I can enter I often enter a space where I entirely believe, oh yeah, well, there's no problems. I mean, nothing's wrong. That these are just labels. Why does my why should I choose to operate in a mode of constantly searching for the problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
No need. I can just be here, and life can be magical, um, and that and I do know as well that to have that realization, or to have that mode of perceiving where you're not chasing or seeking or assuming something's wrong with reality, you're not disempowered to create more joy and wellness for other people around you, or to engage with this unfolding present moment in such a way that you can craft it towards things that you imagine will be cool. You can still interact with reality. In fact, you're more empowered to interact with reality in a way to shift it according to your desires. So it doesn't not perceiving a problem doesn't disempower you, but yet, I mean, there are problems. I how do you what does it mean to say that there are no
Well,
problems when
I would
things are there's a lot of pain, and shit needs to get done, and
I would say that there are, like, quote unquote problems. Uh, Actually, I would say that there aren't, but I would say that there are there are processes, and
yeah, yeah.
right now processes are kind of going, kind of downhill. Uh, but there's always like an upside to everything. The way you can look at anything, your perception, how you look at something changes, the way you see it. Like if you're looking at something through, rose-colored glasses, everything's going to look rose-colored to you. If you're looking at it through, the I believe that the world sucks glasses, then the world is probably going to suck for you. But if you're changing your perspective, if you're aware of that perspective, you have the ability to change that perspective. You have the ability to say, "Hey, I don't need to look at it that way." And yes, there are things that are, like, I would say, I don't want to say bad, but I would say, like,
Not desired
yeah,
by
not
most.
desired. But just because something isn't desired, does that make it wrong? Like it's one of those things. Like uh, I don't know if we really think about that too often. Like I know that there are processes going on, and I know that, like, I definitely think that there are things that I definitely do not like in the world, and I want to help be a part of that change, and I'm doing what I can to help do that. But I don't know if I would call those, like, actual, like, you know, for lack of a better word, problem.
I think it's the word. That's what
Yeah,
I'm getting
yeah,
at. It's like the word bad and the word problem. It's just a bit low resolution. But I would come back to, again, I think presence reconciles that. I mean, and this is something Eckhart Tolle says in that book. Presence. No, what did he say? Sorry. Problems exist in time, right? Problems come from this conception that there's a state of the world, there's the set collection of attributes, and if some of them aren't the way you want them to be, that's bad, and we should be anxious. And if some of them are the way you want them to be, that's good, and you should feel glad of that. And that's a whole set of frameworks and assumptions that's just limited in its capacity to map reality. But when you're present, when you're living in the now, I think processes captures it slightly better. Yeah, there's stuff going on, and there's stuff going on that might be implying that it's going to become something you don't like. There's stuff going on that you might not like how it is right now. But the term problem doesn't quite capture it when you're in the moment. And I think one of the things that's written on my card here around the present moment is that because the present moment is literally all that exists, everything we want or could reasonably want exists in the present moment. And if it doesn't exist in this present moment, I guess it doesn't exist at all. But a quality state of living and the well-being we're all seeking, as Ryan put it, or as Ryan sort of alluded to in the chat earlier, is a quality state of living is it's to do with our processes in our mind, the state of operating that we're in, right? Like, we're not seeking. The reason we seek to change the state of things is so that we can feel good about life. It's so that we can feel excitement and gratitude and more meaning and connection and warmth and all of that. And when you're awake to the present moment, you realize that you can only create and exist in those feelings now, and you can always create and exist in those feelings now, right? So when I sort of particularly attuned to these truths that I'm trying to articulate now, when I encounter problems, it's oh well, I have this unfurling ecstatic joy in being alive now and being able to play the game of life, and these are the various values I have, and these are how things work, and so I'm going to make this choice to change things because I don't want it to go that way and I do want it to go this way, and there's this amazing thing. There's no pressure for it to be that way now because it only is only what is now exists, but there's this lovely opportunity to engage now in such a way that it might change towards what I want. But I can do that with joy because there's no pressure for it to. It has to be this certain thing. The only thing I have to do is live out my values and enjoy what's going on while I'm here. But yeah, there's no pressure for it to be that way now because that's not the game. That's not the game. The game isn't to create for the world to have. The game isn't that the world has to be in the state of things that we like, right? That's not the game. The game is live while you're alive, and but fortunately, included in that, in living while you're alive, is the joyous process of taking actions to create a better world, the things that you most
Yeah.
highly value, right?
Yeah. Values. Yeah. That is one thing that's very fascinating is like values are, they're profound. And uh, I mean, this group, Mindform, we talk about them all the time. So
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
we know about this. I don't know how many people like that aren't really like philosophers or haven't read a lot about values, like actually think about how much it affects your life, like your values, your beliefs, like all of that stuff, like has a profound effect on the way you see the world, and the way you interact with the world. And if you, if you have like some conflicting values, then there's probably going to be a lot of conflicts in your life, like it just makes sense to me that would be true. Sorry, I don't really know where I'm going with that, but
No, that's all good. But no, I completely agree. I mean, one of the main positive impacts. I mean, there's been a lot of cool ways that connecting to you and others on Mindfulness has had an impact on my life. But a particular thing is really, I mean, obviously Ryan's sort of the values and virtues are really, really at the core of his philosophy, his philosophical framework around well-being and eudaimonia. But we all seem to, to some degree, we've all in the community adopted that language, and I think an increased appreciation of the centrality of values and virtues and the whole game of life, it has been really, really profound for me. Like, because when I can lean on that, something I posted at Mindform like a few months ago, and it sparked some interesting conversations. This idea that Ryan's theory is like character. Character is like the game, right? It's expressing your virtues. That's how you do life. And I've got three for me. It was two, but I've added one. But character, compassion, and communion. And communion is like sort of presence and connection with life. But sort of going through life, just to focus on the character part, to focus on Ryan's model there, going through life. Instead of perceiving problems and challenges, to understand that what's going on within me is that I have things that I hold as really valuable. I have things that are really, really important to me. And then when I can bring, okay, what are my values and how can I act them out to any situation, that's just always joyful. That's always an opportunity. That's and I realize asking that question is always relevant because those processes are always going on, but it's just sometimes for whatever reason, I'm disconnected or distracted from what is it that I value? And I think that language is a useful way to map the landscape. So shot, Ryan.
Yeah.
Good one.
Yeah, great.
Hey, that might be a good place to sort of start approaching the end of the call. It's a few minutes past the hour. I like to ask all our guests, what is an insight or maybe a tool or a recommendation that you would want to leave the listeners with coming out of this conversation? Man, it's kind of lame that it's ending right now. There's so much more stuff I'd want to talk about with you, but we'll have you on again. But yeah, what would you like to leave the listeners with?
Well, I'm not really sure. I'd say the big thing for me lately has been about connecting with people, and not just with people, I guess with just everything, like get outside, take a walk in nature, sometimes take your headphones out and just listen, like hear the sounds, see what's going on around you, pay attention. The world's awesome, it's just amazing. Like I agree with pretty much everything you said, Frank. Like I think you and I are on very similar paths, but I do agree. Like, what's not to love about like the experience? Like even the bad stuff. Like yeah, sometimes the bad stuff happens, but you wouldn't understand the good without the bad. Like you sometimes need that to give the good more meaning. And just pay attention. I don't care if you meditate or not. Like I want people to be present, and I think if people became present, the world would dramatically change, and like for the better, like in every way, shape, and form. So yeah, just be present, I guess.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, well, I could not possibly dispute with any of that. I'm on the same page. That's it. I think when you said connection's really important to you, but just connection to everything, right? Like that's where the aliveness of being alive is. It's in engaging with the experience that's unfolding. So yeah, I'm always seeking that, and that's a great note to end this on. So thank you so much for coming on, Lucas. I was wondering if I'd get a chance to grab you because of your long work hours and all of that, but it's been a real pleasure. We'll have to have you on again. Thank you for your bringing your experience and your unique insights and your unique capacity to put it into words as well. We'll leave it there. So thanks for coming on. Have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you, Frank.
Cheers,
Thank
Lucas.
you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Mindform Podcast. I'm Ryan A. Bush, founder and author of Designing the Mind and creator of Mindform. Mindform is an exclusive community and training platform for sculpting your psychological software. Members get access to a group of like-minded psychotechs, including all of our guests on this podcast, gamified growth tools, events and retreats, and a collection of transformative programs for mental health and self-mastery. You can learn more and apply to join at mindform.io/podcast. I hope to see you inside.